Jihoon Kang was used to being wanted. Wanted by women, wanted by power, wanted by the world. Until one night in Seoul, he met a woman who saw him and found nothing there worth performing for. This isn't a story about winning her, it's about everything he had to unlearn to be chosen. The women around him laughed like they'd rehearsed it. One leaned in close enough that her perfume clung to his collar. Another rested manicured fingers on his forearm, tracing the expensive line of his watch as if it were an invitation. A third pressed her thigh against his knee, slow and deliberate, eyes bright with competition. Jihoon Kang barely noticed. This was the rhythm of his nights. Predictable, indulgent, effortless. A private lounge at Onyx Soul. Low lights, velvet seating, champagne that cost more than most people's rent. He didn't have to ask for attention. It arrived already warmed, already willing. A woman whispered something meant to sound intimate. He smiled out of habit. Then, across the room, something broke the pattern. She stood at the bar alone, not scanning the room, not watching him, not pretending not to watch him. She had seen him, he was sure of it. Their eyes had crossed briefly, but there had been no pause, no widening, no recognition settling into interest, no calculation. She turned away. Jihoon felt it like a disruption in gravity. She was black, tall, elegant without effort, a fitted red dress that didn't scream for attention but held it anyway, natural curls framing her face, posture easy, grounded, like she belonged everywhere she stood. She didn't perform, didn't hover, didn't orbit, didn't care. His mouth curved slowly, arrogance blooming on instinct. Interesting. Someone laughed too loudly in his ear. Jihoon shifted, gaze still fixed on the woman at the bar. No woman in this room ignored him unless she wanted something. And he always won. Ariel Brooks took a measured sip of her drink and let the bass settle into her ribs. Seoul nightlife had a pulse all its own. Glossy, kinetic, expensive. She'd been here long enough to move through it without being swallowed by it. Tonight wasn't about being seen. It was about enjoying herself before an early morning studio session. She'd noticed him the moment she walked in. It was impossible not to. That was new. He was beautiful in the way men were taught to be. Controlled, confident, unused to friction. Ariel recognized the look in his eyes. Not desire exactly. Strategy, ego. She didn't resent it, she just didn't participate. "You're used to attention," she said calmly. He tilted his head. "And you're used to withholding it." "I don't withhold," she corrected. "I choose." A pause. The women from his table were watching now. One of them, blonde, sharp-eyed, was already displeased. Ariel noticed, filed it away, didn't shift an inch. Jihoon followed her gaze and smiled, unbothered. "You don't seem intimidated. Should I be?" "No," he said after a beat. "But you should be curious." She finished her drink, set the glass down gently. "Curiosity requires mystery." "And I don't have any?" She stood, smooth and unhurried. "Not yet." Then she walked away. Men like him bent rooms without trying. Power hummed off him. Tailored suit, relaxed confidence, women clustered like they'd been drawn by a current. She clocked him the way you clock a skyline. Acknowledged, appreciated the architecture, moved on. Men like that were rarely interesting up close. She turned her attention back to the bar, fingers resting loosely around her glass, mind already half on the design concept waiting on her laptop at home. Motion graphics, a new client, a deadline she actually cared about. She didn't notice him approach until his presence shifted the air beside her. Up close, she was even more composed. Jihoon took the empty seat beside her without asking. He didn't crowd her, didn't touch her. He knew restraint could be just as effective as charm. "Let me guess," he said smoothly. "You're waiting for someone." She turned then. Slow, unhurried. Her eyes met his. Dark, assessing, calm. "No," she said. "I'm enjoying my drink. Not defensive, not flattered, just factual." Jihoon smiled, wider now. Jihoon Kang. She took a beat before responding, not because she was impressed, but because she didn't rush for anything. Ariel, no last name, no curiosity in her voice. A challenge then. "You don't seem surprised," he said lightly. "I try not to be," she replied. "Surprises usually come with expectations." "Interesting answer. You know who I am." It wasn't a question. She shrugged, a subtle lift of one shoulder. "You're hard to miss. Not important, not powerful, not famous. Hard to miss." Jihoon leaned back, studying her now with intent. And yet you didn't come say hello. I didn't feel the need. A flicker of something sharp passed through him, quickly replaced by amusement. Most people do. She smiled then, small and polite. Most people want something. And you don't? I already have what I need. Jihoon laughed softly, unable to help himself. You say that like it's permanent. Her gaze didn't waver. It is. No drama, no glance back. Jihoon watched her disappear into the crowd, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. Not desire, not yet, something closer to interest that didn't ask permission. He exhaled slowly and smiled to himself. The game had begun, and for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure he was in control. Jihoon didn't think about her the next morning. That was a lie, but a useful one. He buried himself in meetings, investor calls, a product roadmap review that stretched longer than it should have. Soul moved fast, and so did he. Desire was an indulgence, not a distraction. Still, when his creative director slid a tablet across the conference table that afternoon, Jihoon's attention sharpened. We need something bolder, Min-jae said. The internal team isn't missing technically, but they're missing culture. Jihoon leaned back in his chair. Meaning? Meaning this launch needs to feel inevitable, aspirational, global. The tablet lit up with motion graphics, fluid, intelligent, emotionally restrained. The visuals didn't beg to be liked, they assumed you'd catch up. Jihoon stilled. The name beneath the portfolio made his jaw tighten slightly. Ariel Brooks. He didn't smile, didn't react. But something shifted, slow and deliberate. She's soul-based? He asked casually. Recently relocated, Min-jae said. Selective with clients. Turns down work constantly. Of course she did. Jihoon handed the tablet back. Set the meeting. Ariel read the email twice before responding. She knew the company. Everyone did. Kang Dynamics wasn't just tech, it was infrastructure, the kind of power that rewired cities quietly, efficiently. She almost declined on principle, almost. But the brief was interesting, the scope ambitious. And she didn't build her life around avoiding impressive men. She built it around choosing meaningful work. She accepted. She didn't think about him until she stepped into the glass-walled conference room and saw him standing at the window, hands in his pockets, city stretched beneath him like an offering. He turned. Recognition flickered, controlled, unreadable. Ariel Brooks, he said smoothly. We meet again. She met his gaze without flinching. Mr. Kang. Not Jihoon, not impressed, professional, good. She was different here, sharper, more contained. The softness he'd clocked in the club replaced by clarity and command. She spoke about design like it was architecture, intentional, structural, disciplined. Jihoon listened, really listened. That was new too. When the meeting ended, his team filtered out, leaving them alone. This changes things, he said. It clarifies them, she replied. He studied her, tone quieter now. You didn't tell me what you do. You didn't ask. Fair. He nodded once. Dinner. She didn't answer immediately. Not no, not yes. After the contract is signed, she said, and only if you're capable of separating business from ego. Jihoon smiled, slow, genuine, dangerous. I don't lose, he said. She picked up her bag. Then this should be interesting. She left first again. But this time, Jihoon didn't feel like he was chasing a challenge. He felt like he'd been invited into something he might actually have to earn. The launch timeline accelerated fast. Ariel expected that. Companies like Kang Dynamics didn't linger once they decided. What she didn't expect was how quickly Jihoon adjusted around her. He stopped dropping by meetings late. Stopped multitasking when she spoke. Stopped treating her time like something money could stretch. He was still arrogant. She doubted that would ever disappear, but it had shifted, less performative, more contained, like he was paying attention instead of assuming control. That mattered. They were 3 weeks into the project when the tension arrived in heels. It happened at a private industry mixer, invite only, polished, the kind of event where networking pretended to be socializing. Ariel wore black this time, clean lines, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back, attention on the conversations that actually mattered. Jihoon arrived late, as usual, and with him, Yuna. Ariel didn't need an introduction. The room shifted subtly around her, model beautiful, immaculately dressed, familiar with the space in a way that suggested history rather than novelty. Yuna slipped her arm through Jihoon's with proprietary ease. Ariel clocked it without reaction. She didn't step back. didn't stiffen, didn't adjust her posture. She simply kept talking to the creative director beside her, finishing her point with calm precision. Jihoon noticed. Yuna had always had timing. Perfect, inconvenient timing. She smiled when she saw him, a slow curve of her lips that suggested memory and expectation. "You've been hard to reach," she said lightly, fingers tightening at his arm. He didn't pull away. But he didn't lean in either. Across the room, Ariel stood composed and radiant in a way that had nothing to do with performance. She wasn't watching him, but she was aware. He could feel it. Yuna followed his gaze. "Oh," she said softly. "So that's her." Jihoon's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Don't," he warned. She laughed under her breath. "Relax. I'm just curious." Curiosity from Yuna was never innocent. They approached together. Not his choice, but not a fight worth making yet. Ariel turned as they stopped in front of her, expression neutral, open. Jihoon spoke first. "Ariel, you've met Yuna Park." Yuna smiled brightly. "Jihoon and I go way back." Ariel nodded politely. "Nice to meet you." No edge, no comparison, no tension she hadn't been invited into. Yuna tilted her head. "Are you enjoying Seoul?" "I live here," Ariel replied calmly. "Oh," Yuna said, blinking. "For work? For life?" Jihoon almost smiled. Yuna recovered quickly. Jihoon always surrounds himself with interesting people, though he has a habit of moving on quickly. A test. Ariel didn't look at Jihoon, didn't need reassurance, didn't flinch. She met Yuna's gaze evenly. That sounds like something he can clarify. Then, finally, she turned to Jihoon. And waited. This was the moment. Not dramatic, not explosive, but decisive. Jihoon straightened, his voice calm and unambiguous. "Yuna, this isn't appropriate." Her smile faltered. "Jihoon, we're done," he continued evenly. "And we've been done. Don't speak about me like I'm not standing here." Silence rippled outward. Yuna's expression tightened, pride stung. "You didn't seem to mind when—" "I mind now. Clear, public, final." Ariel didn't react, not outwardly, but something in her eyes sharpened, not approval, assessment. Yuna scoffed lightly, masking the blow. "Good luck," she said to Ariel, tone sweet but hollow. Then she turned and walked away. Jihoon exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, turning to Ariel. "That shouldn't have touched you." She studied him for a moment, searching for cracks. "I don't need apologies for other people's behavior," she said. "I pay attention to yours. Fair." They stood there, the noise of the room rushing back in around them. "Dinner," he said quietly. Not a command this time. She considered him, really considered him. "Not tonight," she said, "but you handled that well. Not praise, but acknowledgement." He nodded once. "Next time." She smiled faintly. "We'll see." Later, alone in her apartment, Ariel replayed the moment. Not Yuna's words, but Jihoon's response. No defensiveness. No ego. No performance. Just clarity. That was new and dangerous, because attraction was easy to manage, but consistency? That required attention. She set her laptop on the table, opening the latest design files. But her focus slipped, just slightly. For the first time she wondered, not if he could get her, but if he could keep showing up. The first thing people noticed wasn't what Jihoon did. It was what he stopped doing. The lounge invitations went unanswered. The private tables remained empty. The women who used to orbit him like fixtures in his life began to fall away, confused, slightly offended, then replaced by nothing at all. He stopped performing, not because Ariel asked, because something in him no longer wanted the noise. Their meetings became different, shorter, focused, purposeful. He didn't comment on her appearance, didn't flirt, didn't linger. When she spoke, he listened without interruption. Asked questions that proved he'd been thinking, long after she'd left the room. Ariel noticed everything. She just didn't reward it. They were alone in the conference room late one evening, screens dimmed, the city outside cast in blue and silver. The launch visuals pulsed softly on the wall between them. "This works," Jihoon said quietly. "It feels honest." She glanced at him. "Your brand hasn't always valued honesty." "No," he agreed, "but I'm starting to." She held his gaze longer this time. That was new too. Trust crept in sideways, not through grand gestures or declarations, but through absence. The absence of pressure. The absence of ego. The absence of distraction. Jihoon didn't disappear, but he also didn't invade. When he invited her to dinner again, it wasn't wrapped in bravado. "I'd like to take you out," he said simply. "Not because I expect anything, because I enjoy you." She believed him. That was the dangerous part. They met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Han River. Warm lighting, understated elegance. No spectacle, no entourage. Ariel clocked the effort. "So," she said lightly, "what made you change your approach?" He didn't dodge. "I realized I didn't want to win," he said. "I wanted to be chosen." The honesty landed between them, soft, heavy. She took a sip of wine. "Those aren't the same thing." "I know." Dinner stretched comfortably. Conversation flowed. Art, design, the strange weight of being exceptional too early in life. Ariel spoke about creativity like it was survival, not indulgence. Jihoon found himself admitting things he rarely voiced. "I'm good at building systems," he said quietly, not always at being inside them. She studied him. "Lonely at the top? Lonely everywhere," he corrected. Her expression softened, but she didn't rescue him from it. "Good. I'm not interested in fixing anyone," she said. "Including you. I wouldn't ask you to." They walked outside afterward, the night cool and open. The city reflected off the water like a promise. He stopped near the railing, hands resting loosely at his sides. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her hand. She paused, then nodded. His touch was light, careful, like he understood this wasn't entitlement, it was permission. The contact sent something steady through him, not hunger, grounding. She let herself feel it, not fall into it, not disappear inside it, just feel. Jihoon didn't rush, didn't pull her closer, didn't make the moment about escalation. That restraint did something to her chest. "I need consistency," she said quietly, "not intensity. I can do that. You don't know that yet." He smiled faintly. "I'm willing to learn." They stood there a while longer, the city breathing around them. When he walked her to her door, he didn't ask to come in, didn't lean in for a kiss. He waited. "Good night, Ariel. Good night, Jihoon." She closed the door and leaned back against it, exhaling slowly. This wasn't a game anymore. And for the first time, she wondered if she was ready to let him continue. The launch night arrived without ceremony for him. That too was new. Kang Dynamics' global debut unfolded in glass and light. Media, investors, executives moving through the space with practiced ease. The visuals Ariel created wrapped the room in quiet authority. Not loud, not begging to be liked, unavoidable. Jihoon watched from the edge, hands in his pockets, pride settling somewhere deeper than his chest. She had changed the tone of his company, and without ever trying, she had changed him. He found her near the back, speaking with a journalist, posture relaxed, voice assured. She didn't scan the room for him. Didn't search. She trusted he'd show up. That mattered more than applause. When the interview ended, she turned and saw him watching her. Something in his expression must have shifted because her brow lifted slightly. Curious, he crossed the room. Jihoon didn't look like the man she'd met in the club. Still composed, still powerful, but quieter now. Present. "You disappeared," she said lightly. "I wanted to see it through your eyes," he replied. "Before I made it about me." She studied him, searching for cracks. There were none, but there was openness. "Walk with me," he said. Not a command, a request. They stepped onto the terrace overlooking the city. Soul glowed beneath them, alive, unbothered, expansive. "I'm done pretending this is casual," Jihoon said, voice steady. "I'm not interested in anyone else. I haven't been for a while," she didn't interrupt. "I know you don't reward potential," he continued. "So I won't ask you to trust what I might be. Only what I am now." "And what is that?" she asked quietly. "A man choosing you," he said, openly, without conditions. Silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just honest. She had learned to recognize consistency when it arrived. It didn't rush, didn't plead, didn't perform. Jihoon hadn't asked her to bend, hadn't dimmed her life, hadn't made her compete. He had adjusted. "I don't want secrecy," she said, "or ambiguity. You won't have either. I don't want someone who leaves when things get quiet. I've already learned to stay." She searched his face one last time, then she stepped closer. "Then yes," she said. "I choose this." Relief crossed his features, not triumph. Joy. He reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers without hesitation. Cameras flashed nearby. People noticed. Jihoon didn't let go. He didn't care who saw, didn't care what it meant for his image. For the first time, he wasn't curating a moment. He was living one. "This is Ariel," he said clearly when someone approached, voice calm, assured. "She's with me. Not possession, presence." Ariel squeezed his hand once, subtle, grounding. Later, when the night softened and the crowd thinned, they left together. No rush, no spectacle, just intention. At her door, he kissed her. Not hurried, not consuming. Just sure. "This doesn't feel fragile," she said softly. "It isn't," he replied. "I won't make it that way." She smiled. For the first time, she didn't brace for disappointment. She leaned into him instead.